We often tend to look at new problems with old frameworks, and sometimes those frameworks need to change. So with AI is a typical case.
Is it wrong to think that AI is the great holy grail that will chop all expenses?
Cutting costs, that's a very tactical kind of approach, right? Short term. You have an also strategic approach, much more longer term.
Is it that we're in this kind of state where the assumptions we're making are not aligned at all with the reality of the world we're actually building right now?
Confusion is good as long as we are aware of it.
What is the number one risk?
We shouldn't go there with life-threatening decisions like that with AI. This is a really risky area.
Well, Santiago, great to have you with us. Welcome to the AI Values Podcast. What a lovely thing it is to have you with us today.
Thank you guys, and thank you everyone for listening.
Well, listen, let's, as always, get straight into the action. And look, before we came on today, we've spoken to you, and you told us that the single biggest problem in AI at the moment isn't necessarily, it can be hallucinations or data. It's something else. It's something with our understanding, our beliefs about the systems we're using. Well, tell us, what is it that we're getting wrong?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because we often tend to look at new problems with old frameworks. So reality is changing, but we try to understand it with the frameworks we have. Yeah, and sometimes those frameworks need to change. So with AI is a typical case where we come from a world in data, systems, technologies, that machine learning even, it was very much deterministic. So you have a code that you script and you rely and you know exactly the inputs and the outputs. But Gen AI is not deterministic, it's generative, is probabilistic. So by definition, that framework of deterministic doesn't necessarily encompass all the possibilities that you can use AI, but also you can then use it wrongly because you expect deterministic answers and you are having probabilistics and generative kind of machines. So I think that framework needs to be adapted and understood to the new reality we have here.
Yeah.
I want to take a step back, actually, and wonder if the big question we should be asking is this. So are we living in this kind of almost suspended state of confusion in some ways between what is probabilistic, what's deterministic, what should we be expecting, what are we actually guessing? Or maybe even the even bigger question is it that we're in this kind of state where the assumptions we're making are not aligned at all with the reality of the world we're actually building right now?
Like everything new, we have a little bit of that gap in understanding and we're confused. And I guess confusion is good as long as we are aware of it, right? The problem is many people are innocent to that and believe. And I'll give you a very quick example. When they approach AI, and again, to my point of old frameworks, they go like Google. If you have Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, they see a little kind of window to ask a question and they think it's a Google search. They ask a question, they get a result, they say, oh, it didn't work. This is not Google search. You need to have a dialogue. You need to be active. You need to be curious. You need to ask the next question. You need to research. So it's not like a passive search. And in that confusion, we lack that curiosity, that question, what's the next question? How can I use it differently? And I think that is the problem where we are at the moment. All this is so new, but we tend to use it as the old. And in the meantime, we don't accept that we're ignoring that there are other questions and other curiosity that we should explore to really use it well.
One of the things that's coming through in many of our chats is the ability to ask questions. And you just mentioned it again there. It's curiosity, yeah. But to be able to ask a question and also spot the mistake is probably one of the greatest skills in the age of AI we can have. But also, there's an underlying tenet. We know, I think you know and I know, what assumptions make us. They make an ass out of you and me and everybody using AI. We have to ask really good questions, don't we, Santiago?
Exactly. And it's very interesting because with that kind of, coming back to my point before, deterministic lens, we tend to want deterministic answers, so we don't get that curiosity by definition. Now, when we have, and this is come to even the question of hallucination. Many people say, oh, I asked this, wrong answer is hallucinating. Well, let's change a little bit for a moment the mindset and imagine if you have Gemini, you have Claude, you have ChatGPT, you ask the same question, it's going to give you 3 different answers. People are going to say, you see the proof. Well, if you have 3 individuals and you ask the same question, they make you different flavors. So the moment you change your
That's
lens and you
exactly
say,
right.
well, we actually have subjectivity and is needed because that's how you get actually more rich debates, more interesting ideas, better actually breakthroughs. If we were all thinking the same, we will not move. But we wanted to think like us deterministically, but we wanted to break through. And by definition, that doesn't work. As opposed to start thinking, okay, if I cannot solve the problem as I used to solve it, and I have a machine that may be very intelligent, let it disagree and show me something I haven't seen. So maybe I see a breakthrough and an answer, as I do with a good colleague or someone up here that I want them to, in a way, give me insights and blind spots that I don't have. It's not hallucination. It's just that richness of different points of views. And I think that's where curiosity starts. I'm curious to understand your point
Right.
of view. I'm curious to understand the AI thinking differently than the human.
Yeah, I'm speaking to a lot of people all the time, and there's all these different thoughts and concerns about the kinds of systems that we're getting or that we're building. I want to ask, I wonder if this is a question we should be asking. Is it really that we need to change the way we think about design almost, the way we're actually putting these systems together, such that we're not putting them together in the old way, in the way we always used to put systems together. And actually, we need a completely different kind of way of thinking about design. And is it really a design question that we're facing here?
I love where you are getting to, because that reminds me, I've been in digital transformations all my career, and we often come, and now we're coming really to that. For example, in the past, we have processes that we needed to automate, and we thought we take a robot and we automate the process automation. Now we say, oh, let's bring AI, it's going to automate processes. But to your point, automate a process is almost like a process upgrade, but what we need is real transformation, is real redesign, is seeing that these tools are kind of allowing us to reinvent those processes, not just upgrade them, not just automating, not just copy them as they are and putting it there. So the moment we open our mind that this is new, this is transformative, we now start thinking, how can I do it differently, giving new skills and possibilities and tools that are there. So humans interacting with them differently will recreate new processes. That's what used to create in the past, for example, the Ubers of the world or the Airbnbs. When data and connectivity and apps arrive, they change business models. That is exactly where these technologies can do, is starting to think how we create new value and actually capture value and create new processes to deliver value, given that we have new tools. So it's a reinvention of it. It's a new markets, new offerings, new services, not the old ones just upgraded, if that makes sense.
The problem is, isn't it, that, you know, in business and in many organizations, it could be a charity, could be government departments, and that happens all the time. It's happening a lot at the moment here in the UK with government. Chopping down, you know, appealing to our baser nature, which is to save money, to cut costs, to cut salaries, all the stuff we don't need all the experts in our business. We need a really efficient, clever system which will answer all of our questions on a fraction of the cost. Efficiency and cost cutting is so much part of this. And is there anything wrong with that logic, Santiago? I mean, it is right for a business to make a bit more money, and therefore is it wrong to think that AI is the great holy grail that will chop all expenses?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because that is, again, coming back from an old world and trying to frame things from that old world to the new reality. When we think cutting costs, that's a very tactical kind of approach, right? Short term, right? And you have an also strategic approach, much more longer term, which is more about capturing value, creating value, right? Now, I'll give you an example.
Right.
Imagine you have company A and company B, two companies, both with 100 people, right?
Yeah.
And you say company A will automate processes, will get rid of 50 people, and now you have 50 AIs working with them, and they cut costs, and short term, they make some good money there. Company B says, no, no, this is a generative technology. It can give me so many new ideas, so many new ways of capturing value, delivering value. So I'm going to keep my 100 people. I will use their good ideas because they, better than anyone else, know the business. But engaging with AI, stimulating their thinking, they may come with new ways of doing, and they will actually start having innovation, new ways of going to market, new ways to serving the customer. And now they start having new AI agents working for them because they are building a. So now that company B have the same 100 people plus maybe another 100 or 200 because when you create more, it's expanding. In the long term, which one wins the competition? Company A, half of the size of company B, doubling, tripling the size. And that is the strategic longer term. Let's go and conquer the market, conquer the world, not just cut ourselves and be less competitive in the long term.
It's so positive.
You can give us some insight into what does really good look like in this new world we're all kind of navigating towards? What would be a good way for, say, you were speaking to a board, as an advisor, or as speaking to an executive team, and they ask you, look, I don't know where to go. What's a good way to do this? What does good look like?
Yeah, I think coming back to the idea of generative, I think these technologies are great for innovation. And innovation means we're discovering them, we are learning them, right? So we cannot have the mindset of every project needs a quick ROI. We need more to be thinking like a pharmaceutical company that have maybe 10 tests, 10 experimentations, 9 fail, but 1 works, and that one's breakthrough. What I'm trying to say here is it works well when we experiment with it. We're in an experimentation phase. We're talking about confusion. We're confused because we're still learning and experimenting. So where this technology is really good is to help us facilitating creativity, facilitating innovation. And by the way, it shortens the go-to-market of that new production of new products, and because we can create new ideas, test them quickly, maybe fail quickly, but also quickly test others until we get to one. So in a way, it's getting the risk lower as well. If you were a pharmaceutical trying 10 trials, actually you are shortening your life cycle of the production of the test. And that's why actually, by the way, we're creating new recipes faster. So it's less risky to test. So let's not be afraid to test. And let's use this as a shortened life cycle of the production of new. But in that sense, we need to allow it to go in the areas that we are not used to go, right? For example, I'll give you a quick example of somewhere I really like using it. Talking about groupthink, you have a meeting with different people in the board, and they tend to actually not express all their opinions because they don't want to challenge maybe one member that is maybe more dominant. So everybody tend to agree with the same ideas, and then you have not optimum discussions and decisions. Well, if you introduce AI and you say to AI, read all the documents that everybody read to prepare the meeting, and bring all these agenda points, and then when people are discussing, you may ask to AI, what are we missing? Sometimes we actually don't remember all the points, so it will remind you something. Or maybe challenge us, maybe give us something, again, creativity, give us an idea we haven't think of. And then maybe some people wanted to say that, but because there was, personal kind of egos, you don't say. The AI don't have a problem. If throw that in, everybody jumps in, and it's not personal. And that again is that experimentation, is that creativity, is that allowing different opinions, points of view. And AI for that is great because it's not personal. It will say the points that everybody could have said, but they didn't dare or would have forgotten. It works very well in that sense. And that for creativity is really good.
I mean, it's just so wonderful. It's like a fountain of potential, which is just fantastic. But let's get real for a second. We've got lots of very important business people listening to us and watching us right now, and they're saying, come on, get real. We can't turn this juggernaut around. We've got business to do. We've got to sell. We've got to make some money. And so how on earth do you change that mindset in any organization that's stuck in its ways to say, hey, embrace the creativity? Because it's great saying this stuff, Santiago, but good luck convincing the average boardroom that they should get creative.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have, for example, in general terms, when we play with with technology, I often make the analogy of the left side hand of the brain and the right side hand of the brain. We have one side that is more, innovative, creative, and one side that is more rational and maybe more structured, right? And I agree, we need a right balance in organizations of both, because if we are too structured, we don't move. If we are too innovative, we also get a little bit nowhere. So there is the right space for everything. What I'm saying is AI is really good for that playground area where we can play with it
Right.
and create ideas. But of course, then you need to test them and you need to see if they work, and then maybe put it into production and then govern them and keep it kind of locked down so nobody touched them, right? Now,
Yeah.
in that prototyping cycle, my point was it allows you to have more generation of ideas and faster testing, because to your point, and those are you were saying where it works, is great for simulation. AI
Right.
simulates so many scenarios, so many ways of testing different options, and as it simulates, it will tell you it's working or it's not. Right now, if you
Right.
think about how AI really works, is when you saw, for example, how AI, when it was starting to make the breakthroughs, it was beating chess players, it was beating this type of games. But the good point wasn't that it was just beating them, is by beating them, it was creating new moves that we didn't know. And
Yeah.
that is exactly my point, is we cannot force it to do what we tell it. It just, so put it into, and that's what agents are going to start doing. You give them an objective function. This is your objective. This is your input. Figure it out. But you don't control it. And in that area, it will start creating good answers. Now, it has limits. And I agree with you. For example, in the financial services or in regulated industries, you certain guardrails and of course
Yeah.
limits and what it cannot do or it can't do that, then definitely yes, that's your governed part, where you don't let it for very risky decisions or very life threatening questions. You cannot let AI go there, right? But that's what I was saying, left side, right side, you have a space to do it. And coming back to the very first point, that way we are not confused. If we know it works well for data innovation, creativity testing, but not for the very kind of deterministic side we needed, is like having two tools. You use the screwdriver for something and the hammer for the other. It's not every tool for everything. So we still need your machine learning deterministic. And actually, some agents work very well with some machine learning scripts. You could ask an agent that after it touches this guardrail, it just then turn to a script, and then you use a script. So you create determinism into the generative, but you need to
Yeah.
know which area is which, right?
You're touching on something that I think is really, really important here, and that is risk. And I think I'd like us to drive a little bit deeper into that area, because it's great to talk about the creativity, it's great to talk about ROI, it's great to talk about all these great things that have come out of AI. But the big thing a lot of organizations are worried about, a lot of executives I speak to, is risk. And it's not just, and this is why I want us to drive into this a bit deeper, it's not just the risk of AI doing something wrong in itself. You might get this ROI or whatever else you're trying to get, but it's actually the risk of, whilst it's getting this right, is there something else going wrong somewhere else? So the trade-offs, right? I get this right, I save a bit of money here, but something has happened to my customer, or something has happened to my employees, or something has happened to my positioning in the market, whatever that thing is, which is, the thing that happens on the side, which is unintended, not exactly what I was focusing on when I was trying to build the AI. How do you view that side of things, what I'm talking about here in terms of trade-offs? And if you come across this kind of things, what do you advise organizations, executives, how do you advise them to address this kind of issues?
Yeah, that is again coming back to that idea of understanding where it works, where it doesn't. So definitely it's not ready to be completely customer facing for certain things. For other things, maybe
Right.
yes. I'll give you an example. We work in my previous organization, financial services organization. We needed to explain to certain customers some financial products. By definition, financial products for some non-financial people are very boring. So you used to have leaflets that nobody reads, and whereas this AI was ingesting all those leaflets and was understanding what was the financial product about. And we were actually, any individual could ask this AI avatar. It was like an individual then talking to the customer, and the customer could ask questions about the financial product. And he was explaining it really nice because you were interacting, so you were not reading something boring. However, we put guardrails that any point the person tries to ask for financial advice, the AI switch and say, I cannot talk about that, I'll pass you a human, right? And we really tested everywhere to break it, to see how we even give tricky questions to see if it doesn't give financial advice. Now, my point here is for explaining a document, summarizing information, giving you cues on a long body of text, they are great. Financial advice, very risky because we are regulated, we can't. So it's not that it was going to be good or bad, it's that is a no go. That is the guardrail. So I think that is the point from the beginning. Which areas is good and which areas is allowed? Put limits, the rest put a human. The human in the loop is still very important for customer facing, for risky decisions, for human threatening maybe questions, etc., right? So there is a no-go.
Listen, we're at 20 minutes and we have lots more to talk about. We will, as always, have an extended chat and we'll talk about things like the future of work. We'll talk about risk. We'll talk about how to make this really work for everybody. And we'll talk probably creativity a bit more as well. But we'll do that shortly and we'll put that out as a separate piece of content. But for now, and think about this just for a second, Santiago, if there was one biggest, most fierce danger or risk or opportunity, but let's go danger or risk of using AI wrongly at the moment, and give it a couple of seconds. What is the number one risk that you think we don't even understand yet?
Well, I will say that the whole discussion we're having at the moment in the US with the suing, how AI doesn't go or goes to the military and taking decisions on, I was saying, life-threatening. That is a no-go, and it shouldn't go there. And I'm very kind of happy that the biggest vendor at the moment is saying no to the government. But there are some saying yes. And this is a really, really, really risky area. So we shouldn't go there with life-threatening decisions like that with AI.
You mentioned defense, but it does raise a very important set of points. What values should we be considering? That is life and death. If we think about healthcare, that's equally important in terms of the use of AI and getting it right. But Edosa mentioned about the ripple effects. If you do something over here which really works, what about the effects over there? What values do you think we should really be focusing on? Are there sort of principles above everything which we should never forget? Or is it just okay for a business to think about return on investment and efficiency and those things? Where's that balance, do you feel, at the moment? And it might be feeling.
Yeah, let me cut this question in two sides. One, values for the organization, values for the enterprise, then maybe more widely values for the society, right? So two sets of discussion, but they're going to be related. So let's start first with an organization that is using AI in order to, achieve something valuable. Very easy, and we talked about the ROI, the cut costing, and I was talking about also the idea of enhancing and more kind of using AI as an enhancement to, the value creation, actually, right? Now, in that one, imagine in the past you have assets, physical assets, and companies deliver services or products to organizations by combining those physical assets in a magic sauce, the know-how of the companies, right? So that is knowledge in a way, right? And every organization has their knowledge. With time, there was data, internal data, how you understand, how you operate, external data, the wider market. So now the magic sauce, the knowledge is now enhanced by data. With AI, you can now use this to actually understand that internal magic sauce plus the internal and external data with many different ways of doing it. That was my generative, my simulation, my creativity, how I create new magic sauces given more data, internal, external, and that's how you enhance the pie, enhance the go-to-market, the new
Yeah.
services, and so for me that is the value. It's not the cutting cost, is really the enhancement. But at the end of the day, a human will come and will look at, okay, give me all these ideas of new magic sauce. This is the one I'm going to implement. So then you always need a human, but the AI is helping you iterating, thinking, testing, looking. And I think that's the value, the enhancing our capabilities. From organization, let's now go to the society. In society, you have similar questions. For example, drug testing or a hospital, or there will be new ways of finding answers to diseases and problems and questions. Actually, by the way, we have two big and complex problems in the planet that luckily we have this type of technologies allowing us to think differently and maybe have ideas. But at the end of the day, we will need a human coming and say, this is ethical way of answering that question, or this is not ethical. I mean, how do you resolve hunger? The AI can say, well, we just finished all the humans and there is no hunger anymore. Okay, that's
Yeah.
not ethical. Another solution, another, right? So these will give us ideas, enhance value because we have new solutions. But at the end, the human needs to say, that's ethical, that's not ethical. And that goes for many questions. Now, the key point, and I finish with this one, is that at the moment we're training AI mostly with utilitarian knowledge, with rational knowledge, with, again, more enterprise value. We need to achieve this and that, and much less with ethical knowledge, with soft skills, with human knowledge. And I think we need to create those AIs. If we give AI enough understanding that, like a monk have, of ethical, philosophical, and value text, this AI will be also more ethical, philosophical, and maybe value test, because it's also what we're giving it. It's like a kid. We're training the kid to be an adult that is actually more ethical in the future. And I think that's where the value also needs to go, is let's train it not just to short-term value, utilitarian, more also ethical value, but at the end, a human needs to have the dialogue, I think.
There's so many questions I can ask, but I want to narrow it down to just one question, because I think if I was sitting and watching this on YouTube or Spotify, wherever, one of the key things I'll be thinking about is, now we're talking about value and values. You know, the one thing that comes to my head is perspective. You know, so when it comes to values within organizations or external to the organization, perspectives or people's points of view as to what is valuable or what isn't valuable, what is creating value, what is destroying the value, can be very different about the same thing, And that's the important thing here. So, I mean, there's so many examples. Think, okay, say I implement a fraud system. I mean, you're a banker, you've been in the financial services. You know, it could be that it saves you money over here, but what's it doing to how customer experience, as an example? Is it having a problem there? So, is the executive who's concerned about saving on fraud different from the executive who's concerned about customer experience? Is that also different from the one who's implementing the technology and that's causing them problems in operations or in technology? You know, so, you know, and that's aside from even stepping outside the organization, even within the exec group there. So how do you see that playing out in your experience, and how are people sort of able to address and resolve these kind of challenges?
Yeah, I think that comes back to my very first point at the beginning about allowing different point of views and understanding the generative side. I myself personally, I'll tell you how I use AI for personal use cases. That is, I find really great way. When I was at uni, I used to read many books like we all did at uni, and there were certain authors that were my favorite authors, right? So now I'm creating AI agents per author, per my favorite ones, right? So I have Nietzsche. I love philosophy. I gave this AI all the books of Nietzsche. Then I have author B, C, D, and I have an AI agent per author. Now, when I need a very difficult question to be solved, I go and ask them these questions. Okay, from the Nietzsche perspective, what would you say? From this perspective, what this is giving me is, to your point, we have different perspectives. But now the great thing is that it's like you sit in the table with the geniuses of the geniuses that you admire and you read and you kind of understand, and they will open your mind to different ways of seeing, and you will make up your mind. It makes you often more intelligent because you know them, but not that well. Maybe details you forgot. And this is that perspective that will allow you to be maybe more ethical or at least more informed from different points of view before you go ahead. And I think for that, this is great. But you need to interact that way, knowing who you are asking, bringing different perspectives, allowing the different perspectives, and then making your mind the human in the loop again.
It sounds a bit as though this is values first. We've had digital first, we've had data driven, but this is values driven. And that's a really interesting thing because, and also something that we've struggled with on the podcast to work out which value and values is really important. Yeah. Well, this is different for healthcare, it's different for a trust over here, it's different for a business over there. But is it important, do you think? And I'm going to go on to jobs in a second, but is it important to think about the values of your organization first while you're building this thing up? And just briefly, is that first of all important? Then we'll talk about jobs.
Yes, definitely. And this is exactly that point is if you think about values, our societies are cultures, and cultures are even changing, and different cultures have different values. Different organization has different values as well. And these values needs to change in time, given the change in the market or the change in the context. So a value in itself is not something that is cast in stone forever. The good thing with this is that it allows you to see the perspectives that change, the context that change, and maybe the evolution of your values. And to really be ethical, you need to have that perspective of the context, because the same answer in a context may be ethical, not in another context. I could give you so many examples going there, but the good thing of this is it allows you to be a little more flexible with your values because you can challenge them from different perspectives, be it from an organization, for a market, for a solution that you are bringing to a society. You need to look at different perspectives before going ahead.
The one thing that comes to my mind now is there's a big question, and that big question is around if you, as you said, the value isn't cast in stone. It isn't one thing. It's not something that stays the same all the time. And also, we know that there's different perspectives as well. So I think it brings, it really shines a light on this one word that a lot of people are starting to be concerned about. I don't know if it's coming to you as well. Is this thing around how do you defend the value? How do you defend the decision you made at a point in time when things have now changed? So it's almost like thinking about defensibility. How are you able to track the fact of I've made a decision based on this value and now things have moved on? Does that come across? I know we want to talk about jobs as well, but does that come across at all in your experience? Is that concern that you're thinking is going to come up more and more so as we progress?
Yeah. I would almost say you need to be pragmatic, and I'll give you two very quick examples in society and in organizations. Societies, some cultures used to fish these animals. I'm not going to name the culture. We all know that they were fishing whales or maybe sharks. And they can say that's our values. And actually, when the planet was very kind of giving to humans because there were not that many humans, that didn't really impact the ecosystem. Today, that same value, giving the planet and the population and the hunger and all the ecosystem things, that same value, we can now question it, right? So the same question needs to change because pragmatically, the world cannot keep fishing all of them like we used to because there is not enough for everyone and the ecosystem dies. Similar in a market. Something that works in a point in time and give you revenue or efficiency or change context may not work anymore. And that's my point. The reality check is what really puts to test the values. Though you have values, but if the reality check is telling you that used to work, now it's not working. And the great thing with AI is that simulations allow you to do those reality checks much iteratively and quickly. That reality is now moving. So you have that tool now that helps you to do reality checks often with simulation.
It's sort of a state of identity. Once you understand your identity, who you are, but also who you want to be, and that will hopefully generate good business, but also generate benefits for the people around you, the ripple effects around you. And so let's talk about jobs for a minute, because one of the one of the classic fears, and it's here and it's increasing, although perhaps AI isn't responsible for many of the job losses that people see, but maybe entry-level jobs, but not further down the line. The fear is there. Obviously, things are changing. The unknown is a very scary thing, Santiago. So, what would you say in terms of the value of people? We've mentioned it in the podcast, but what is the ultimate value of people going forward in conjunction with AI? We need better skills. We need to interact more. We spoke to one of our guests who said, look, the most important job for a young person in the future will be the person that works with and gets creative with the AI, understanding the output. So what do you think the role of us lot, of whatever age, is going to be going forward? Do you have any idea? This is one of the hardest questions, and if you answer it, you get the gold star.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I believe that these enhance our capabilities. And I was trying to make throughout the whole interview that point, that example of if we use it to enhance us, if we use it to stimulate our creativity or stimulate the different points of view or stimulate the way we test things, we iterate, we go to market fast, etc., etc., it will actually generate value. It will generate goes to market, it will generate jobs. It will. I can give you many examples of areas where we are actually using it today to change the processes we have and now to go to market with new processes. So that is an idea of saying it's not cutting us revenue, it's actually generating revenue. So of course, people need to engage and use it and use it proactively, not passively. It's not this that AI is not going to do the job for you. You need to work with it to create a new job, and then it's really good. If you wait for it to do the job for you, it will take your job, yes. But if you are active and proactive and curious and experimental, it will generate new possibilities. And I think it's so exciting. There are so many possibilities you can generate. I keep talking to people personally and professionally, how many options we have now with these tools.
Yeah, I'm the same. And lots of people come to me and ask me all these questions. And I can imagine, sometimes a difficult conversation. But what would you say to people who are listening, who are thinking, maybe they've lost their jobs, or maybe they're worried about losing their jobs right now, or they're listening to the news and seeing all the layoffs, even from big tech, the guys even making the AI themselves, laying people off. What do you say to people like that who feel like, is it going to get much worse before it gets better? Or what's the direction that we need to be, navigating this period? What do you say to people like that?
Yeah, I would say, look, if you have new time back because you are now in between jobs, go and learn it and go and engage and go on and work with it. History, I'll give you two examples of history. We know what the past has given us. When you have the typing machine and there was a secretarial and people used to dictate something for that to be written in a typing machine, and then computers come and people thought that's the end of secretarials. Actually, no, with computers, there were emails. And what happened? We all are now doing emails. So we all became secretarials. And guess what? Secretarials got promoted to manage agendas. So it didn't took their job. It reinvented to everyone else and it changed their jobs, right? You have so many examples in history. I could go on and on. I think we are too afraid of a change and we don't see that there is other things coming that can create a multiplier effect. When a photography was created, people, and this is an example I give to creative people that say, look, AI is going to also take our job. Well, photography was creating painters. Photography said it's the end of painting because painting was figurative, right? So then photography was like, oh, it's doing better the representation of reality than a painting. Well, guess what? You reinvent painting. You started having pointillism because there was, the pixels and the points, and with pointillism they create expressionism and impressionism because the points can be with colors and with figures. So painting became an expression of reality. And guess what? Then photography said we also need to reinvent the photography, the point of view of the photographer. So neither of them died. They both reinvented themselves. And that's the point here. There is so much reinvention. We just need to engage and see the potential and have ideas. And then off you go. You're going to have a new job because you recreated it.
Yeah, I've worked in this space for a long time, and as a filmmaker, documentary maker, and more. And one of the things that I've told people around me for 20 odd years is, look, the technology is going to change. It's going to get smaller. The tools you use, the stuff that you think you're an expert on, and that's why you work, and that's why you command high fees, that's going to change. The technology changes, but your ability underneath that to tell a story, to interact with people, to do all of the quality stuff that makes you who you are, the values, not necessarily the value of that equipment, that's what you do. And so when people hear me go on about this until I'm even redder in the face, they go, oh yeah, actually it's the way I interact with people. It's the human qualities. There are similarities here with AI. It's been just great to have you with us. Thanks so much for all these great points, Santiago.
It's been so good to have you on here, Santiago.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining. It's been so valuable, and we can't, really, really excited for, the listeners and people watching this.
A
Thank
true
you, guys.
philosopher.
I hope we continue the conversation. Many more to say. It was a great exchange, and thank you for all those good questions and ideas as well. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.